So someday they might send you a letter saying you're taking showers that are too long.
They send a shower police after you then?
All right, next person up is Keith Schenkel, and I'll give you Keith's bio, which was very touching. It says Keith Schenkel says, he said, here's going to keep it simple. He says, basically, I love God, my wife, family, friends, and country, and just try to do what I can to make a better future for them. The journey to save my country has strengthened my faith in God. And I think that's probably true for all of us, since this is overwhelming what we're engaged in. And it says he uses his gifts in science, electronics, programming, and teaching to expand the Lord's kingdom. His current projects include trying to understand the legal system and how it can be applied and working for liberty against it. And he's also working, as he mentioned earlier, on a communications tower for community radio. And he's got a website that's kind of always under development. It's libertyforge.us.
Okay. Basically, the smart grid. Most of you are already familiar with that. I'm assuming. So this is kind of an overview. It's basically an umbrella of surveillance and control over the current electrical system. Okay. So on the front page there, the bottom 4 clouds are the current system, and they want to dissect the current system and take out the operations and control parts of it to be managed by, we'll find out in a little bit, the organization that's undefined. So the supposed goal is to use real-time variable pricing as a mechanism to level the load, the peak load of the energy system. Now, the second page here, here's an example of what they're talking about. Their complaint is that they have to provide generator capacity for 10% of the load. Okay? Okay. For 400 hours a year. Okay? So that's expensive too. Okay? Now, what I see when I look at this is you have a graph here on this top graph. You have generation power versus distribution power. You see that? There's two lines there. Well, there's approximately a 17% difference between the power that gets generated and the power that gets distributed. Do you see that?
Yes.
That's not addressed in hardly anything about the smart grid.
So they're generating more electricity or power than they need?
Well, what I'm saying is that 17% of the electricity generated is wasted due to
Unused.
being absorbed because of inefficiencies in the distribution system. Now, a part of that is simply the resistance of the wires, okay? That is a part of it. But the biggest part of it is the complexity of such a large electrical grid. When you have 60 hertz is our electrical system, okay? So the alternating current goes up to 170 volts and then down to negative 170 volts and just keep going back and forth, up and down, over and over and over 60 times a second. Okay? So that works out to 16.67 milliseconds per up and down cycle. Okay? So that means that every generator system all across the country has to be exactly coordinated with each other. Otherwise, they're bumping into each other. Does that make sense?
Yes,
Okay.
they're going up and down at the same rate,
Right.
same rhythm.
Right. So the problem as I see it, the best solution if you want to save energy is to, we have a GPS, now nobody asked me, so, but if I was doing it, I would use the GPS satellites, which are really an absolutely excellent timing mechanism. We use that to derive GPS data from, but really it's a clock. okay? I would use the GPS system to coordinate the timing of all these generators, okay? Now, I can't be the only person that didn't think of that. That's just not reasonable.
So I'm asking you, so obviously, this came from the U.S. Department of Energy describing this problem and how this would be better than the smart meters. So you know something about this. I'm going to ask you this question because from all the research I've done and I've talked to some people that actually understand it and really get it, relating it, and I guess there's still a part of me that thinks, well, I don't know about this stuff. These guys are smart. They know what they're doing. They don't know what they're doing. The experts say that the problems with security and all sorts of things. I mean, they're just doing it.
Television, the guys that work with electricity don't think about GPS.
Well, I sat and spoke with the OG&E marketing guy for an hour and a half, and he's a very nice guy, and I realized he has no idea what he's doing. But so my question is, I can understand what this is right here. Why aren't they doing that? Why?
Because that's not the purpose. We'll see in the next.
That's what I'm saying,
page.
'cause that's not the purpose of the smart meter.
Right, so if they were truly interested in an efficient grid, that would be the first thing that they address. Now, the,
Makes me mad.
Well, that's fact, but this is
You're
so
right.
interesting to know because we can't, I have a smart meter on my pole and they put it on without my permission. And then they wouldn't take it off once I told them to take it off because I'm a rural electric co-op person now.
They won't take it off for anybody.
So, but, you know, so we were thinking, well, we need to figure out how to fight it, but we can't fight it unless we have good information like this. So I just think that's great and it's fascinating.
well, addressing their, the 10% or the extra capacity that's only being used during the peak hours of summertime, there's a reason that it's being used during the peak hours of summertime, and that reason is because it's dadgum hot outside. That's what where the energy is being used. So, that is factored into the cost of the electric. We pay that voluntarily. You know, we don't go argue with the electric company about their rates because it's summertime. We know that it costs that much to deliver that electric. Okay, so it's simply false what they're saying. But let's say that they do want to reduce that peak load, and they've come up with some mechanisms to do that. And so the second graph there is their idea of reducing the peak load. Well, if you look on the blue dotted line there, that bump above on each side, above the normal load, I don't know if you've noticed, but that would not fill in the gap there in the middle. You
Right,
see that?
right.
So that is saying that their true intention is to reduce the usage of electricity
Right.
during peak load,
That's
not
right, that's right.
not to distribute it.
Correct.
Now, the smart grid, what does it do? You have this smart meter on your house, and it is designed to be able to communicate with the devices in your home to turn them off during peak load periods. Yes, when you need it most. And that will save the electric companies from having to have peaking generators, they call them, turn on. So basically their complaint is they want a generator that just runs 24/7 at the same speed all day long, 365 days a year. And that would be cost effective, I agree. But that's not real life. Now, if your air conditioner turns off during this peak time period, it makes sense that the temperature in your house is going to go up. Okay? Now, the power company then sends a message to your power meter saying, okay, the peak time period's over, so your air conditioner kicks on.
So does everybody else.
Now so does everybody else.
And it's working harder to
And
try
now
to
the
catch
peak
up.
just
Yes.
moved.
So now the peak just shifted to after the low. Does that make
That's
sense?
hilarious.
You see what I'm saying? Now, imagine if you were a malicious hacker, or a prankster, because most hackers really are pranksters. Now, do you know how much fun it would be to hack into the grid, the smart grid, and turn on all of the hot water heaters all at the same time?
That's funny.
You know? I think so. So the current delivery model is basically a pretty straightforward system across the industry of, they call it a silo model, where you have the power distribution and the billing. And they're pretty much similar models. As you can see, they're very symmetrical because the network is symmetrical. Now, on the bottom of that, if you want to Google it, is a what I think is a very good reference put out by IBM and Cisco on the overall business model shift from the current delivery model to what it's going to take to get to the smart grid. So that's something to look up if you want to. On the next page, the smart grid from the front page has 7 domains to it that they're describing. And bulk generation, let's start looking at that. Right from the get-go, for bulk generation, they require a division between whether you are a green energy source or not. And so new requirements, and a lot of these are quotes from the framework document, which I didn't reference very well. But new requirements for the bulk generation domain may include controls for greenhouse gas emissions, increases in renewable energy sources, and provision of storage to maintain the variability of renewable generation.
Does this mean that you're only gonna be able to use energy depending on if the sun shines or the wind blows?
Yeah.
Well, as you're going to be able to see here in a minute, what they're doing is they're stripping away the infrastructure from the control system. And so then we're going to see that based on the way they're doing a semantic model of how everything works, they'll be able to pinpoint policies within different layers of control to adjust those policies to enforce whatever outcome they want.
Right,
You see what I'm saying?
Yep, that's right.
So, the transmission and distribution system that I talked about a while ago is the main source of the inefficiencies. The reason that they're inefficient is because they've been developed under proprietary systems for the last 100 years. So companies like the telecommunication companies, you can walk into a central office and you can find equipment that looks like it came off the Saturn V rocket because it still works. So they're not going to replace something that still works. Okay? So if the distribution companies are not paying for the difference in that price, if they're passing that along, they don't really care. It works, and so, it's not a big deal to them, I guess. But those, you can read on there on your own time, I guess. The transmission and distribution system are based on very, very old technology, okay? And it's not compatible at all with newer protocols. The communication systems, say for long distances, to communicate when there's a problem on one end or another, they carry that information along the power lines because they're already there, okay? Now, the problem is that's a very difficult technology feat back 20 or 50 years ago when they developed that system, okay? So there's not enough overhead in the information stream to convey more information than was necessary to get the job done. Because when you design something, you start with, what's my goal? Back then, it was to get this job done. And so that's all it was designed to do.
So what
So-
you're saying is they can't fit the new technology into the legacy system.
Right.
They originally needed, they needed and wanted very little bandwidth on that reverse communication line, and so they designed it for 300 bit or something.
Yeah.
And even though theoretically it could go buku faster, the equipment that's in place doesn't. It's
Yeah.
designed for that.
And what's even more dangerous is that equipment is controlled and monitored by dial-up modems with passwords.
No.
Yes.
Yep.
So I am amazed. I just can't hardly believe that we haven't had a massive cyber attack already. It's implausible that there's not 100 organizations out there already
That's what my
that could launch
husband
one
said.
tomorrow.
When I, he's an IT guy,
Yeah.
when I gave him the step-by-step on how these things work and all that, he goes,
Uh-oh.
hasn't been hacked yet?
Yeah, the Chinese haven't figured that out. I mean, their
The
business like
teenage, he's
10
like, seriously, there's some
10,000
serious
times
stuff.
an hour or something, right?
What am I
Yeah.
missing here? How can they
Uh,
put this new,
well, I
this
guarantee-
new system up to that old stuff?
Well, that's what I'm saying is the new system is not really going to address this problem.
That's right.
But it's because it wasn't intended to address the problem, is my contention.
That's right.
I don't think it'd be very wise actually to install new SCADA systems that are all harmonized and standardized. And because anytime anything becomes standardized and interchangeable, interoperable, it becomes easy to hack because you just learn to hack
Of entry and.
hack once and get in many times.
That's true, but how hard would it be to war dial the numbers associated with your engineering offices at the electric company?
I'm not sure how many people know about dial-up systems anymore. I mean, that was technology in 1985.
Go to
What was
any
that
Barnes
first-
and Noble's bookstore and pick up 2600 magazine. It's still very current,
That's true.
currently exploited information by hackers. So,
I'm lost. What's still currently exploitable information?
dial-up modem technology,
So
how to
how
hack
to
it.
hack it. Okay.
So, next page is the, starting with smart meters. So the customer is the next domain, okay? And so there's a smart meter picture. Now, on the bottom of the page, you'll see a graph showing how privacy can be very thoroughly invaded by your data readings, okay? Now, you can tell based on the energy profile of what a device consumes and how it behaves, you can build a profile of exactly what that device is, okay? Now, this is actually rather simple, okay? Now, this was based, I think, on 1 minute granularity. The smart meters that GE is putting out go into the thousands of samples per second. Okay? So they will be able to tell very precisely.
The accuracy of the signal, or signatures will be almost flawless.
Yes. So they'll be able to tell exactly what's going on in your house at any given time. Now,
Which appliances it is.
yes, and not only this though, but the smart meters will measure your gas usage and your water usage, and if you live in a city that distributes steam, they'll measure that too. Okay? So
How do they measure gas if they're not physically connected?
Tied to the meter. They link electronically to the
There's
gas
a
meter.
home area network, and so your different meters will be tied together, or
Oh, so
connected.
there's a smart meter for the gas meters too? That is
It's
what you're
more
saying.
of yeah, it's a monitor, it's a meter that connects over your home area network. So each home will have, the smart meter is a gateway.
Uh-huh.
It's a modem that connects your house as communications to the phone company, or to the
Okay.
electric company.
So, like on I think on my water meter, they put in these meters that they can read electronically
There
instead
you
of
go.
having.
That's it.
Yeah.
So the
There you
smart
go.
meter can read
That is the
those.
smart
There you
meter.
go.
Yeah.
Okay.
So someday, they might send you a letter saying you're taking showers that are too long.
That could happen.
That could happen.
Yeah, because my daughter gets in the shower, she's there for about half an hour. Yeah.
Yep.
So did they send the shower police after you then?
They probably start with a letter
They'll make us cut
and,
off our
and then
hair.
a citation
Shower too
probably.
long.
Just make sure the hot water heater doesn't turn on and you'll get out of the shower.
Yeah, there you go.
I had to go
So-
out in the front yard with the key and turn the water off once was, the middle daughter was just taking too long.
Oh my God.
You did not, did you really?
Yeah.
Anybody that pull the coil out of the distributor,
Well, that's
Do
You
it.
learned early on, didn't you?
That was a long shower.
Let's see. On the next page, no pictures on that one, but appliances. Your plug-in electric vehicles are gonna be considered an appliance.
Yeah, exactly.
What concerns me about those is when you look up the models that are used to develop the software to control the billing information for the PEVs, that includes the latitude and longitude of the current location of the PEV.
Sure.
So they're going to know where your car is at any given time.
your car?
Yes.
Electric
Yeah,
cars.
Yes,
Oh,
more than
electric
car.
car.
Electric car.
Yeah.
Electric car.
This- A lot of the smart grid is to equip them without building new power plants to be able to recharge the thousands of electric cars they want us to drive.
Yeah.
Holy
So-
cow.
So the, anyway, so your toaster, your water heater, your washer and dryer can all be, controlled by a smartphone.
You know, it wasn't long ago, I heard that there were complaints that we were plugging in so many iPods and laptops and things like that, that it was gonna overload the grid. What are electric cars gonna do?
Oh, it's gonna be horrible,
Yeah.
and that's
Well-
why it's an issue.
Well, really though, most electric cars are gonna be plugged in at night. When the grid is not being used.
Not peaked.
Yeah,
But you had 54 million new cars at night, and now you got a big
Then we
problem.
Now you have a
gotta
problem.
peak all the time.
If you go back to that one page, everybody read that third sentence in the top paragraph. The electric vehicle battery could be used as a power source to supplement the grid in a demand response scenario, although the vast majority of recharging will be done in off-peak time.
yeah.
So your car's battery is a storage
Oh,
of
it
energy.
can take it out, it can
And
take
then,
it out,
and
it
Yeah.
then it can,
can take it out,
Yeah.
yeah.
And that's up to just a simple signal from the power company saying, we need that resource.
Which means you might wake up in the morning and realize you don't have enough
None.
enough charge to
Yeah,
drive to
because
work.
it was
back.
busy draining it instead
Are
of
we
charging.
insane to be letting,
exit of energy?
I'm like,
Yeah,
why
you
are we
get-
not out there
you get
ripping that
paid
thing
for
on
the
our house,
energy
the amount of
released back to
control
the-
this gives
to
us?
the power
I'm like,
company.
we've lost all of
Okay,
our
they-
survival
they
instinct or
don't
something, that we're not out
steal
there
it.
ripping it off.
They just take it without your permission.
We're too civilized.
Did you hear what he
They
said?
did-
That-
They don't steal the energy, they just buy it without your permission.
He was asking if you charge, it's two-way transmission out of your battery, your car battery, and he said that they would pay you, but
Yeah,
credit.
it's
I bet
credited
not
to
credit,
your
but
account.
yeah, I wonder if it's the same rate.
It's whatever they want, right? They're gonna take their word for it.
So
Well, and in a
on-
demand response scenario, you
How
may
would
not
you
get
know?
that.
Yeah, well, you know, if they need it in the middle of the night and you gotta go to work in the morning, you might wake up with a dead car
That's
battery.
exactly what
Yeah.
Randy just said over here.
So on the next page is some, the EPA has put out some remote access requirements for the home area network devices, okay?
Something here, but
So, for example, the top half is things that they can monitor, the bottom half is things that they can control. So they can monitor your room temperature and set point of your air conditioning. Okay? Basically all those devices in your home, all those conditions they can monitor. and then the bottom ones they can control.
Move your computer.
Well, this is only for the air conditioning system right now.
Okay.
But there are protocols and stuff that they're still developing to address appliances.
So what is the part mandatory, proposed status for 2.x, what does that mean, Natalie?
That means that has to be included in that protocol.
So manufacturers have to manufacture to these specifications. And
If-
you probably cannot buy a rebuilt.
I don't know if
You
you
get a
can
new
buy,
one, it'll have
I'm
to-
sure that hole will be plugged free.
That's why they're
Yeah,
building such
eventually
incentives to
you'll have
replace
to
your air
do it.
That's
conditioning
correct.
equipment, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah.
This makes me sad.
Let's see, the service provider, markets and operations. All of those are things that technically take place right now in an entirely different way than what is conceived by the smart grid. Your service provider is almost guaranteed to be the same power company you get your power from. So if your electric goes out, you call PSO or Verdigris Valley Electric or whoever you have. That can all change with this new system. They're decoupling the control and monitoring of the system from the hardware of the system, okay? So what that's gonna do is that's gonna open up an entirely new business model, entirely new markets, entirely new kinds of businesses.
Why would they do that? So you're saying basically, you get the hardware, you get the controls and stuff. Logically, the power company would be the ones to do it. What would be the purpose in putting another business to take care of that?
So that there be several
When you look at the cybersecurity
Pushing it.
documents
Uh-huh.
over how all of this stuff is going to be controlled and managed, every single entry in the bullet points of what needs to be managed is managed by the organization. It's not defined in the document who the organization is.
They got somebody in mind, is what you're telling me.
I think so. I don't see any reason,
What would be the organization, do you think?
I think it will be some government organization.
Government agency or something that because of security purposes,
Yes.
we are the only ones that, oh,
Well,
heck
it'll be a
no.
PPP of some kind.
Heck no,
Guaranteed.
no.
This is the
Public-private
market
partnership.
model that's being created. When he's talking about this, Patrick Wood mentioned it, and Vicky's talked about it before too, decoupling.
Yep.
So it's taking it away from the hardware, so your rate has actually nothing to do with the actual.
Delivery.
Well, you know, the first thing I thought when I asked you that
Yes,
question
yes.
was, if you had a disinterested party or interested party that was in there and control the hardware, not power company that you have a relationship to pay, might be easier for them to be really mean with the controls. Oh, seriously, that's the first thing I thought.
Right, well,
It very well could
you
be.
will call a service provider, that service provider can be in India,
Right.
okay? And they will have access to whatever the security model says they have access to. And then they will dispatch the technician that might not work for the power company either to fix whatever problem
It'll
it
be
is.
controlled from Bonn, Germany, directly as based.
Yeah.
We're gonna get these things off our hands.
So,
Disconnect.
if you look at the next page, this is what they have as the logic model for the different functions that they need to control. Okay, so they've piecemealed out all the different sections, and they've developed logic models for security, what levels of access, what job functions they are in defining them, and have very extensive, basically extensively identified, but almost blank substance to the, when they say the organization will be responsible for this, there's really no details in there at all. So it's basically a big cloud of indecision about each one of these blocks. Does that make sense?
Is this strictly for residential or is this for
This
all?
is for all,
Everything.
everybody.
So,
Office
but-
buildings,
but-
restaurants, they're already in
But the
restaurants.
distribution channel will probably differentiate between residential and business pretty fast.
Yes,
Because
the residential are what's going to be impacted by far the most, according to some quote I've got in here. They expect that residential customers have like 17% of the initial acceptance or capability of adjusting their behavior to match the smart grid needs.
So you're talking
But
about
up
when it's
to-
voluntary, that's what, I think that's what you're talking about. That when they just do the normal thing that they show 17% of people make some change, it's not that much. And they don't know if they can get it any better than that with it remaining voluntary, that's some stuff I was reading. And they say openly, these are Oklahoma documents, that this percentage, all we're gonna get with the system, all voluntary. You have to do it mandatory for us to get to where we need to be. This is from the Oklahoma Sustainability Network, their white paper responding in 2009 to OG&E's proposal. And they're like, this is all sweet, but you can't get it good enough voluntarily.
The two guys
It
running
has
for
to be mandatory.
Corporation Commission were waffling about smart meters when we asked them in the meeting.
Yeah, they don't want
Oh,
to.
yeah. That's why, yeah, it makes sense.
So they were talking about, you have to have more mandatory, not just mandatory that people use certain things, but also you have to utilize the functionality of the control that you have, because OG&E, in their initial papers, weren't saying openly they're gonna take advantage of any of these, we reach into your house and Zigbee and all this stuff.
Right.
And so the Oklahoma Sustainability Network has gone, They said, if you're gonna do it like this, don't even do it. Don't even bother. But see, the thing is, it's bull crap, because I think, because I sat and talked with the OG&E marketing director an hour and a half, and what I think is, this is a play. This is a play for us. So OG&E puts out the real sweet smart meter plan, and the green, well, that's not good enough, and then slowly it'll evolve. I think it's completely for show, if that makes any sense, because I'm like,
Well, they bite off a little bit at a time.
yeah, sure.
To get to
But I
the
think that
main
What I
interaction-
think is most important
They
about
gotta get
this
in the doors first.
is that a quote from one of the contributors to the cybersecurity system on the next page is the in bold, in the middle. The carbon trading market does not yet exist, but security requirements will probably be similar to the retail electricity market. Now, what that tells me is that this complicated granularized structure here, basically the yellow is operations. I think that yellow is going to be lifted out. Basically, each of these different groups are going to be lifted out and managed separately by some organization that we have no control over, that doesn't answer to anyone, and certainly not us.
Elimination of accountability.
Yes. So it's basically a corporate bureaucracy.
And all those data flow errors there are indicating a particular message packet protocol.
Yes. Oh, yes. That's what's most important about this. This is a massive, I mean massive information structure, an IT network.
It's a communications network.
It is a communications network, but I mean on a very large scale, because each one of these items has a separate security requirement,
Yep.
separate privacy requirement.
Yep.
So that means that, some of you will understand this more than others, that means that each one of these items, each set of data is going to have a separate key for encryption
Yep.
when it's passing on this network,
Yep.
okay? So each one of these has a separate defined policy, okay, with separate encryption riding on a massive network.
And NIST has designed a lot of those protocols. Has NIST identified each one of those message packet protocols
Yes.
already?
Yeah, you can look up,
Yes,
The
yeah.
National Institute of Standards. and
there's
Technology.
but that's what I'm talking about as the vaporware of the organization. It just
Yeah.
keeps referring to the organization without defining it,
Gotcha.
okay? So that's in their cybersecurity,
Well, Keith, that's the same thing as appropriate,
Reasonable.
reasonable.
yeah.
But what if one of these links is hacked into, does it shut the whole system down?
No, it just depends. They are paying a whole lot of attention to security. I mean, very detailed analysis of the security protocols and different systems. What I see as a problem, is, in my opinion, the different companies are leery of this system. And who wants to take a risk of buying GE equipment or Trillium equipment or someone else's equipment when they haven't finished defining the protocols of how the system's going to be working? So you might invest a lot of money in equipment and find out that you're no longer compatible
Right.
with the system. Now, another problem is because of the lack of standards, there are WiMAX protocols, GPRS, GSM, Wi-Fi, cellular 3G, cellular 4G, all sorts of different methods. Because they don't want to shut anybody out of the standards process, all of them have been adopted. Okay?
That's not
So
unusual.
meaning there is no security.
No, not at all
That's
then.
what just-
There's no real security.
So Keith, all those standards you just mentioned are wireless. Do they not have any plans for, as Don's mentioned, a fiber network that's provably secure?
Well, yeah, it will, but it all starts at the,
Oh,
you have a home area network, then that's gonna connect to your neighborhood area network through some link, whether it's cellular or Wi-Fi or WiMAX, a whole host of different protocols, anything you can imagine is being developed. And so you have to buy your meters with optioning for those up front. You have to decide up front. So that's why what you see placed right now is all based on grant money. Nobody's gonna risk their own money on
Get
something
federal
like that.
grants.
I don't know if this fits in anywhere, and I just remember something that I read, and I have no idea how significant it is or not. Is that we was talking about, I don't want to keep losing this, but talking about the infrastructure, is that the Williams Company saw an opportunity when the fiber optics were being
Yeah.
implemented, is that there was an existing infrastructure in place, and it was the oil, gas pipeline.
Yeah.
They laid it in there,
Yep.
in the
Brilliant.
existing.
They do that with natural gas. And that's because they monitor their lines remotely through
And it's more-
through those technology. It's usually fiber too, right?
Yeah, well, they placed the fiber because at the time they placed it, a fiber could carry 100,000 conversations and only took up, size of my pinky finger of space in a 30-inch pipe.
Exactly.
So the data on that fiber was worth far more than the volume that the fiber took.